install sheet piling won't work in these soil conditions. The Met Council is now banking that the hydraulic pressing method will work. Instead of hoping, the Met Council needs to develop a detailed and actionable contingency plan for installing an alternate sheet piling system in the Kenilworth corridor. This requirement will prevent a last-minute scenario where the identified methods fail and homes need to be taken by eminent domain and the three major transport systems wind up at grade. Given the water table issues and the limited space at the pinch point between Calhoun Isles and Cedar Lakeshore condominiums, this contingency plan will not be a slam dunk. The Calhoun Isles high-rise is 2 to 3 feet from the proposed piling system, while the garage footings are a mere 6 inches from this system. If the Met Council is unable or unwilling to develop and to cost out an alternate piling system for constructing the shallow tunnel, then the city of Minneapolis needs to withdraw municipal consent, as nearly 100 neighbors of ours are at risk of losing their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call Bob Brockway, followed by Susu Jeffrey.
Good morning. My name is Bob Brockway, and I, as well as Paul and John before me, we represent 142 families living in the Calhoun Isles condo complex. With the wall of the LRT tunnel being within 4 or 5 feet of the foundation of our high-rise and less than 35 feet from the townhomes, I have grave concerns about 3 items. First one is temporary living may be necessary for some of the families during the local construction. Second, if there were damage to our building during construction, how are we to be compensated? And finally, if once in operation and our livability adversely affected, how are we to be compensated? In the past, the Met Council has shown no sympathy at all for city residents who have incurred damage due to their projects. Therefore, I feel that if the city gives municipal consent to the LRT project, the city must stipulate in writing that the above 3 compensations will be provided without the need of legal assistance, and that ample funds will be budgeted for such anticipated problems. Compensations provide funds for temporary living when necessary. Any damage done during construction should be fully repaired, and any reduction in home market values be compared to values as of today, 9/15/2015. The city should do everything in its power to protect its citizens. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll now call Susu Jeffrey, followed by Doug Peterson.
Susu Jeffrey speaking for Friends of Coldwater. I live in Bryn Mawr at 1063 Antoinette Avenue. This is a picture of construction of a tunnel, a light rail tunnel in St. Louis, Missouri. You'll notice up left the tiny garages. The tunnel would be half a mile long with solid steel sides that are pounded down into the earth 55 feet deep. So that's way into the water table. And for those of you who are allowing us to speak, I want to say that this doesn't just affect residents nearby. Here's a map of the blast zone. Pretty big blast zone, a lot of people in there. It's kind of scary. I live in that. Hope I go out with the first wave so that I don't have to suffer trying to breathe. The problem with putting a huge long tunnel that's very deep is that the water's not going to move around. All the lakes are connected. This year, Lake Hiawatha was closed for swimming at the end of June. Last year, 2 of the 3 beaches at Calhoun were closed. This is just going to compound it. You need fresh water flushing through the system. All water in Minneapolis, well, most of the water in Minneapolis drains through Minnehaha Creek and into the lakes. There are 29 sewer outlets into Calhoun. I think the future of swimming and fishing in the city of Minneapolis is the new $7 million pool at North Minneapolis on Weber Parkway. The idea that they're only going to dewater that area for the tunnel 24 million gallons a day, I do not believe. It's a very deep tunnel. Another problem is that this train will not service the 2 highly populated metro deserts. The north side has been completely ignored except for some buses. And we have a huge parking lot called Uptown, which is a venue in itself, a wonderful place. Restaurants, theater.
We need you to wrap up.
I urge you to reject this and to send the trains where the people live rather than through the parks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm moving to Doug Peterson and followed by Sarah Brenner. Yes, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Doug Peterson. I live at 3315 St. Paul Avenue in Minneapolis in the townhouses in Kenilworth, or on the Kenilworth corridor. I'm very concerned. I was a CAC member from Sidna on the LRT project. I'm very concerned about the safety of myself and my neighbors, especially during the construction of what has been called the South Tunnel. There is no North Tunnel anymore, but it's the South Tunnel. The Met Council has not in any way addressed any of these safety concerns that have been talked about so far. But I had sent a letter last Friday or an email to everybody on the council and photographs yesterday showing what the problems are in my particular area. The area between Depot Street and 26th Street that crosses the trail, there's a 5-foot sewer main that goes underneath the trail, and it's 17 feet deep at the top and 22 feet deep at the bottom. That has to be lowered so that the tunnel can be put in there. At the time of lowering that thing, there will have to be a trench that's about 45 feet deep. Because of the soil conditions that some of the people have talked about, the lateral support very likely will be lacking to hold up the train traffic that's going right next to the trench.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I need you to wrap up.
There's a very good likelihood of a crash with the sides of the trench failing and wiping out the entire neighborhood. There is no insurance that's going to be covering this. The city of Minneapolis is not going to be able to stand behind sovereign immunity on this thing. So I am asking you to vote no for the consent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We now have Sarah Brenner, followed by George Buczek.
Sarah Brenner, 2526 Upton Avenue South. I'm not going to talk to you directly about why you should not give consent to SWLRT, about the inadequacy of the SDEIS, or the dangers of co-location with running highly volatile, hazardous ethanol freight immediately adjacent to 35-foot construction pits and electrified trains. I won't even talk to you about the votes, for I'm skeptical enough to believe that each of your votes will likely be exactly the same as it was in the previous round of municipal consent. Instead, I want to talk to you about how cynical I and many of my fellow citizens of Minneapolis feel about the political process that has led us to this point. We thought you stood with us. We thought you represented us. Instead, you traded our safety and security under ugly threats in a dirty backroom deal for some other favor that the Met Council, an undemocratic, unelected body of government, had the power to grant. I used to be an idealist, believing in the power of what was right and what was just, and in the process of democracy. But this political process has been so vulgar and so disgusting. It makes some of us fight harder, but it also makes many more people just give up. And I've seen a lot of people do that. If it weren't for a single politician, I might be one of those who just gave up. But fortunately, we have Minnesota Congressman Frank Hornstein, who's willing to discuss the very real dangers of running 100-unit trains of ethanol and crude oil alongside LRT and underneath the Twin Stadium. We don't even allow a single high-hazard tanker semi with only 7,000 gallons of gas to go through the Loring Tunnel, but we allow a 100-unit freight train with 2 million gallons of
Ms.
oil
Brenner,
go underneath the
We need
Twin
you to
Stadium.
wrap up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We elect you to be our advocates. Surprise us by doing the right thing and protecting us, and don't allow co-location. It's in your power to change this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I will now call George Buczek, followed by Bob Carney.
Good morning. I'm George Buczek. I live at 1780 Girard Avenue South, Minneapolis, 55403. My comments are an abbreviated version of the email I sent you folks last evening. The supplemental DEIS is incomplete, inaccurate, and misleading. At 21st Street, it excludes the noise studies of a combined freight and LRT crossing gate bells sounding at over 100 decibels. Why did the Met Council exclude this data? Is the Met Council hiding the need to add sound walls or soundproof homes? The supplemental draft is also misleading and applies illogical reasoning. In April 2010, during the locally preferred alternative process, you, as Met Council members, voted for Route 3A, relocation of freight. Now, in a footnote buried deep in the 1,400-page supplemental draft, Chapter 2, page 2-6, footnote 7, the Met Council claims that the locally preferred alternative includes both Route 3A relocation of freight and Route 3A-1 co-location of LRT and freight. They claim that the LPA only applies to transit service and that the freight decision is not part of the LPA. Is the Met Council trying to say that Minneapolis and all the cities actually adopted two preferred alternatives, relocation and co-location? Does the Met Council and anyone in this room think that Southwest LRT is only a transit project? How can the Met Council make this claim when they are giving Twin Cities and Western Railroad $260 million public dollars for alignment shifts and upgrades? Is there an alignment that does not require $260 million public dollars for freight? We don't know. The Met Council never included freight rail
Thank you, Mr.
in the LRT alignment choice. I urge you as our elected representatives to reject the Met Council's proposal. The SDIS uses incomplete and misleading analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to Bob Carney, followed by Steve Kramer. Morning.
Good morning. Bob again, Carney, 4232 Colfax Avenue, South Minneapolis, 55409. You're voting on a plan that is dead, point one. I'm a registered lobbyist. I spent the last 2 weeks of legislative session daily standing out in front of the House chamber, talking to members and passing out 7 different sheets. I am doing a crowd-funded video. Chapter 2 is something I'm going to talk about in a minute on rail safety. But the fact is, the legislature canceled $30 million that they had put into Southwest Light Rail. I talked with Speaker Doubt. Asked him if any more money is going in during the special session. He said no. There is no more money going in. There's $15 million that the legislature has put in so far. The budget calls for $165 million. You're $150 million short. You're voting on a dead plan. That's point one. And the reason for this is that the Met Council in this whole process has lost so much credibility over the legislature. You're not going to get this done. So it's easier to smile about this thing because we're winning. That's point one. Now, regarding rail safety, next door, Lakes and Parks Alliance is having a trial on this issue. That building construction started 1994. 1995, the Oklahoma City bombing happened. 97, it was open. You look at the plaza, you see all the design changes to prevent a terrorist attack from a truck with 7,000 pounds of explosives. I've run the numbers. If you have a chemical train going over a tunnel with 2 light rail trains in the tunnel, you have got 600 times the explosive material on each side of the tunnel. This is an open invitation for terrorist attacks. Now, I've given you a statement here, and I'm asking you to sign one or two of the alternatives. One says that you think that that plan is safe. If you're going to vote for this, I want you to put it in writing that you think this plan is safe. And if you don't, I've got an alternative. And if you want to draft your own alternative as to what co-location would require, when I think rerouting to Uptown would be at point one.
Thank you,
Then
Mr.
I encourage you
Kearney.
to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Kramer, followed by Jeanette Colby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Steve Kramer. I'm the president and CEO of the Minneapolis Downtown Council, business address 81 South 9th Street, Suite 260, home address 4832 11th Avenue South, South Minneapolis resident. I'm here on behalf of the Downtown Council to continue our support of municipal consent for the Southwest LRT project. I want to thank officials in Minneapolis, Hennepin County, and all the cities along the alignment for their work with the Met Council to keep the project within budget and on schedule. Our position is rooted in the Intersections 2025 plan, 10 goals for the future vitality of downtown, one of which is to lead the nation in transportation options. That's for us a multimodal vision. It's bikes, it's pedestrians, it's certainly cars, but it's also fixed rail transit, and building out the regional transit plan, including this next leg, the Green Line extension, is critical to realizing that multimodal vision. The project and the plan overall really reinforce, the idea is to reinforce downtown Minneapolis, our CBD, as the core of the region's economy, which is good for certainly our downtown, our city, and our entire region. And this project helps with that objective. So we stand in support of municipal consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Jeanette Colby, followed by Cathy Law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm Jeanette Colby, and I live at 2218 Sheridan Avenue South, and I'm currently the chair of the Kenwood Isles Area Association, but I'm speaking on my own behalf. I've been involved with this project for a long time, and what I can say to you today is that in addition to the changes that were presented by Mr. Alexander, what's changed since you last voted is that the SDEIS has been published, and I'm here to ask you to read the public responses to that SDEIS, especially the ones from Kenwood, Sidna, and LRT done right. The problem with the SDEIS is that, as you've heard, there have just been too many issues that haven't been dealt with in that study, issues that were minimized, ignored, or underplayed. And these are things that are really critical to the livability and safety of Minneapolis. Some of these issues include co-location, public safety, noise, hydrology, and I would just ask you that you look at some of these questions from us, from your staff, that haven't been answered and that we keep asking. We've been asking for years and without answers. So I would ask you to read some of those responses, ask the questions, and get serious answers that are committed to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving to Cathy Law, followed by Mary Paddock. Hi.
Hi, Cathy Law, 2001 West Franklin in Minneapolis. Really don't like speaking in public, but I care so much about the things I'm reading. Here are some things I just want to know. Did you know? They're just things I happen. These are just some of the things I've read in the past week or so. Regarding the plan to co-locate light rail and freight rail carrying Class 3 flammable material through the Kenilworth corridor, did you know that the Park Board's comment letter on the SDEIS says, the presence of freight rail and its impacts on the users of the Kenilworth corridor has not been fully addressed in the SDEIS from the perspective of any failure of the freight rail infrastructure and the ability to respond to an emergency condition. The Met Council has reportedly only ever met with the fire chief once, despite the fact that the SDIS says LRT will cause emergency vehicle delays of 50 seconds, 12 times per hour at 3 at-grade locations, plus, of course, the delays from the freight rail trains passing by. Did you know that in your comment letter, the city's comment letter on the SDIS, the city asked for ridership by station, including reverse commute, new to transit, and transit dependent, saying that calculating the number of reverse commute riders is an important equity measurement that needs to be shown station by station. If you don't have this information, how can you evaluate the equity of spending all this money on this project? Did you know that the Met Council's submission to the FTA in August of this year says the cost estimates don't include the cost of noise and vibration mitigation or monitoring? Also not included are the costs of hazardous or contaminated material beyond what was identified in early environmental studies. And also not included is construction dewatering, the cost of it other than in the shallow tunnel.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. I need you to wrap
Okay,
up.
thank you.
Thank you. We now have Mary Paddock, followed by Patti, can't quite read the name.
Good morning. My name is Mary Paddock. I live at 2782 Dean Parkway in Minneapolis. Mr. Alexander had suggested that nothing has changed since the last time that you had municipal consent to consider. In fact, much has changed. First of all, there has been the SDEIS, which did not answer many of the concerns that we have as citizens and that we deserve responses to. Secondly, we've learned quite a bit about the dangers of running ethanol-laden trains with millions of gallons of explosive ethanol next to the electrically charged Southwest LRT lines, as close as 15 feet in some places. As has been noted, this route goes through our residential area. There are hundreds of us, literally, whose safety is at stake. It goes through recreational areas where more people's lives are at stake, and it goes beneath Target Stadium, where there are at times 44,000 people. Locating Southwest LRT close to the freight line would drastically increase the risk of an explosion. Given the several light rail derailments we have already seen in our community, it is hardly alarmist to raise this issue. We're also concerned about the construction phase of the project. For 2 years, this will be a danger to those of us who live there. We know from conversations with both Fire Chief John Friedel and TCNW President Mark Wagner that they do share our concerns. Please remember that this is only a proposed route. The Met Council has assured us in court that this is only a proposed route and that there are others. Across the nation, policymakers are trying to remediate dangerous situations like this. We ask you to please make the safety of citizens your top priority and to vote against this particular dangerous route and ask the Met Council to pursue a safer one. Thank you.
Thank you. Calling Patti, last name starting with an S.
Before handwriting. Schmitz.
Schmitz.
My
Followed
name
by
is-
Barbara Lund.
My name is Patti Schmitz. I live at 2806 Dean Parkway. Before you vote, I ask you to please ask yourself, if this proposed route went through your ward and your ward's constituents raised concerns and opposition to it, would you still be supportive of it? Because when it comes to our bike paths, our green space, and our chain of lakes, the entire city is your ward and your responsibility. The planners of the project, first Hennepin County and then the Met Council, advanced project plans without properly delivering on the implicit promise to the city of Minneapolis that freight would be relocated. It was a very basic expectation, and yet they advanced the Southwest LRT planning prior to ensuring that the reroute would happen. The current proposal calls for tunnels to be built adjacent to Cedar Lake and immediately adjacent to homes. We are told there's no environmental risk to our chain of lakes, and yet this tunnel plan has not been properly vetted through a full environmental review process. We already know that the planners failed to secure even the most basic freight reroute. Do you really trust them to build unstudied tunnels next to our chain of lakes? The minuscule ridership numbers in Minneapolis, which do not address urban equity and in fact take 6,000 cars off the road by 2040, are not worth it. There are other alignments that serve Minneapolis better and won't risk our lakes. Will they be complicated and protracted and delayed? For sure. But our chain of lakes is worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Calling Barbara Lund, followed by Greg Dolphin.
I'm Barbara Lundy. I live at 2794 Xerxes Avenue South, and I'm opposed to the present alignment. How many of you drove here today and parked here? Please show your hands if you drove here. Okay. I got on the bus at Lake and Dean Court, and it comes every 9 minutes, and rode here in about 15 minutes. So, in my opinion, this route is not necessary. I didn't take a parking space here or emit any extra gas. I was just a passenger on the bus. So, thank you for listening to my testimony, and please do not vote for this approval.
Thank you. Calling Greg Dolphin, followed by Alex Penney. Alexis Penney. Greg left. Thank you very much. Alexis Penney.
Good morning. Alexis Penney, 3306 Humboldt Avenue North, soon to be moving to Ward 5. Thanks so much, Mr. Chair, council members. I wanted to talk a little bit about economic development because I know the city has a major role to play in that. Specifically, as a North Minneapolis resident, I wanted to talk about the Harrison neighborhood and the impact that Southwest LRT would have on potentially displacing or gentrification that could happen. Specifically, I wanted to bring up an idea of perhaps having a resolution or consideration of a resolution that would include maybe 20% workforce housing in any new development project that was coming along. For example, one of the changes that was happening with this project was the proposed zoning change with the Bassett Creek Valley Planner project. And I wanted to make sure that that was stated up front. And because I know a lot of Harrison residents are not here today to speak on behalf of that, but I know it's a firm consideration, something that that we should be talking about as Northside residents. In addition to that, community benefit agreements, I think that's not only limited to what I just stated. It could be in the form of maybe having a cap on the rent or something like that, like they have in New York, or it could be other creative solutions. I just think that having that kind of commitment and ongoing dialogue throughout this process, because I'm very confident that this project will move forward, that's a piece of it. I think that's going to be really important and definitely something that I'll be watching for.
Thank you. Roseann Haller, followed by Craig Westgate. Oh, Craig already spoke. All right. Then Lee Munich would follow that. Thanks.
My name is Roseann Haller, and I live at 3526 St. Paul Avenue. Big money fuels big momentum. In terms of construction, we don't have to look far from this address to see the evidence of that. It is my opinion, however, that such momentum can allow for the possibility that those in a position to halt this momentum for reconsideration in the face of reasoned opposition will yield to the script of those holding the hand of big money. We hear such comments as, the project is too far along. We've spent too much money so far. We'll stand in the way of progress. And in one televised committee meeting, I heard, no one wants to see this project die. For the record, and repeating something you have heard many times before, this project should have been suspended until relocation of freight rail was assured. The failure of that to happen has been at the rocky foundation of the continuation of this flawed and ill-conceived Southwest LRT alignment. You have heard a litany of dangerous and destructive elements in the project. Is it futile for me to think that you, who have the means to challenge and perhaps stop the continuation of this travesty in construction, will do so? I support LRT expansion, but I oppose this alignment. And I ask you to vote no for municipal consent. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Lee Munich.
My name is Lee Munich. I live in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood at 1149 Cedarview Drive in Minneapolis. And I want to speak in favor of voting for municipal consent. I also am a member of the Southwest Light Rail Transit Citizens Advisory Committee and have been involved in the discussions about the solution that has involved the cuts. I want to say, first of all, I think it's very important that all 5 Minneapolis stations have been maintained and that a solution has been achieved that will maintain those stations. Bryn Mawr Neighborhood Association has consistently supported this alignment, in particular the Penn Station and the Van Wyck Station. The Penn Station is an important transit connection for the Bryn Mawr neighborhood, but also for the north side if bus transit is provided on Penn Avenue. The Van Wyck Station will provide a unique development opportunity to provide new housing near the downtown area in Minneapolis.